Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the National Fire Radio podcast. Today, Deputy Chief Al Pratts, North Hudson Fire and Rescue out of New Jersey. I'm a New Jersey guy. I find a lot of interesting characters to talk to because, well, frankly, New Jersey puts out a lot of characters. Chief, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you being on the show.
Man, it is my pleasure, and you are absolutely right. We are not short of any characters in New Jersey, and I think Northern New Jersey especially. Right? It has its own personality.
Chief, I'll tell you, I think that's why I'm having the fun I'm having with this show. It's because I find the most interesting guys, and I'm like, man, I want to talk to this guy. And when you have a podcast, you get to write the rules. And so I get to talk to anyone I want, right? If somebody's willing to give me an hour of their time, I want to hear their story. So for you, thank you. I know how busy you are with your pedigree and all your experience behind you and what you do. I know you're a busy guy, so I do appreciate some time with you today. And frankly, looking forward to getting to know you because you and I really have not met before other than through text and quick conversation. So looking forward to today, man.
Same here, man. Looking forward to it. Super excited, and thank you.
So let's break this down. Into the career fire service in 2004, you rose up through the ranks, scoring well on all your promotional tests, and that's an important part of the conversation because of what you have done since is being a part of the Promotional Prep crew, which we're going to get into that, which offers tutoring and consultation for guys looking to promote and do well on tests. So we're going to hop into all that. But I want to talk about your career, and I really want to talk about your beginnings. And, you were saying off camera before we started that fire service wasn't your first choice, man. So give me a little background about where you come from and how you got here.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. I listen to so many firefighters out there that I love to listen to and I respect. And they talk about, how they were young, they were chasing fire trucks. Their dad was on the job or a volunteer, and they were going to calls with their parents, or their parents would
Sure.
come home smelling like smoke and this and that and the other, and I always wondered what that was like, and it fascinates me. But my story, it's something where I believe that the fire service really chose me because it was something that was not in my plans. Not only was it not in my plans, but when it was brought to my attention that this was an option, I was like, oh no. Why would I want to do that, right? I was going to school for criminal justice, and I wanted to be a cop. I have military background, former Marine. My plan was to be a federal law enforcement officer, possibly go into ATF or U.S. Marshals or something like that. And that's kind of like the way I saw my future shaping up, and that's really what I wanted. I really didn't have a concept at the time when I was in college of the civil service. I didn't know how that worked.
Yeah.
No one could tell me, you know what, if you want to be a cop, this is the route. You take the civil service test. It comes out every 3 years, and go to these classes. I had no idea of any of that. I thought if you went to college for criminal justice, you're going to become a cop.
That's right.
I didn't have an idea. So I ended up as waking up every single day and going to jail. And what I mean by that, I was a juvenile detention officer in Morris County. And so that was my first taste of law enforcement, so to speak. And while I was doing that, as law enforcement tests came up, I would take those tests, and all I wanted to do was become a cop. I'm like, I got to get out of jail and be a cop on the street, right? Because no one likes working in a prison, okay? Especially with a juvenile population. It is, believe it or not, it's a lot easier to work with an adult population than it is with the juveniles. And juveniles they can't see past tomorrow, can't see past today. Everybody's a gangbanger, everybody's a wannabe. So, so there was so it was definitely interesting, but a lot of good experience. And I would take the law enforcement test, and I wasn't really taking any classes or anything like that. And I was scoring just okay, right? Not well enough to get out of corrections and obtain a municipal job as a cop on the street. And my wife calls me one day and she says, "Babe, the fire department test is coming up. You should take the test." So her aunt was married to a retired deputy chief from Passaic, and he called her up. He says, "He's got to take the test." And so when she told me about that, I'm like, What? I'm not taking a test. I want to be a cop. And so he says, you know what? Take the test. If you do well and become a cop, if you really want to, you could always change over. And I said, you know what? It makes sense. I'd rather go become a fireman and start, into the pension system. And then
Yeah,
later on, if I do well enough, I'll switch over.
sure.
But knowing now, knowing what I know now, that doesn't happen. It happens the other way around. But it doesn't happen where once you get a taste of fire service, you don't switch back. But I
You,
didn't know that at
you
the
don't
time.
leave. You don't leave.
No, you
And
don't leave.
something should be said though, right? Like for people that don't know, a lot of parts of the country, it's not difficult to get a fire job, a career job. In Metro New York area where we are, I mean, literally the cities that you work in, North Hudson Regional is made up of 5 different cities, right? And where you guys work, you literally look at New York City skyline every day because you're right across the river from New York City, right? So, like, it is an absolute job that is in demand. People want this job. The civil service process here is cumbersome. We're going to get into that as we go on. But for you to not understand the process, it makes sense because the process is not super clear. And the competition, you could have, for that police job you were talking about, to get out of juvenile and get a municipal police job, you could have 3 openings and 400 candidates. I mean, that's how in demand these jobs were. And then the fire test on civil service side, North Hudson maybe is hiring a class of 20 or something, or even 10, right? You're not doing massive classes. And you have thousands of people lined up on this list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it was something that unless you have someone guiding you through the process,
Yes.
or unless you just looked into it on your own and realized early on that this was the process, you don't really realize how stiff the competition is. And then if you know how stiff the competition is, then you don't take it for granted. And that's kind of, I don't want to say I took it for granted. I just didn't know what I was getting myself into
Right.
when it came to
Right.
testing, because otherwise I would have spent whatever money I needed to spend, right, to take a class or, get a better understanding so I could do better on the exams, but it was funny because, uh, so I was interviewing through the prosecutor's office, and still, even while I was preparing to take the fire department exam, my mind was still law enforcement, law enforcement. In fact, 2 days prior to being sworn into North Hudson Regional, I took the police test. So I already got the job,
Yeah.
and 2 days prior to being sworn in, I took the police test. And it wasn't until later on where I actually ended up number 3 on Union City Police Department's civil service list, and they were hiring about maybe 10 or 15 guys. But by the time that list came out, I was on the line already. I was,
Yeah.
I was out of the academy. I was working, and so there wasn't even a thought in my mind. But it's interesting that I realize now the difference between the 2 different exams was, in my opinion, is that law enforcement officers operate by themselves
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. Whereas in the fire service, you don't do anything by yourself. Right? Everything is a team effort, including, who's going to shop for the day, who's going to cook, and how we're going to divide up house maintenance. Every single thing that we do in the fire service is team oriented. So I believe that the reason why I did better right off the bat on my very first fire department exam was because I had that team mentality. So I feel like I was more suited for that type of job, and they just picked me.
Was that from your
And
military background, being part of the
yeah,
Marines? Yeah.
I don't know. It could be, but again, I would have assumed that would have helped me on the law enforcement exam.
Mm.
But there are certain things that kind of translate, like when it comes to ethics, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to motivation and those sort of personality traits. They kind of coincide between fire and police. It's the same thing. But the teamwork aspect of the questions that are being asked of you, because the personality testing portion of the entry level exam is a huge indicator of how well you're going to do. Outside of whether or not they're going to be hiring a bunch of military veterans, which, go right to the top of the list, you have to overcome that as well. But still, there are some similarities, but the big difference is going to be that teamwork aspect, whether or not you can make decisions on your own or whether or not most of your decisions are going to be decisions that you make by yourself, or if you're going to rely on the team element to make that move or make that decision.
What is it for you in the team environment? Like, what does that fuel you? Are you I mean, you're deputy chief of the Special Operations Command, and we're gonna talk about all that, and that's super disciplined, super focused, and narrow, right, in your approach. So, do you find that you thrive in the team environment, but you're a standout though? Like, there, even in the team environment, we have team captains, right? You think about like football, you think about sports, right? There's always those leaders, right? The defensive lead, the offensive lead, right? And so on. So it's kind of interesting because I see you, as a Marine, as a former, law enforcement, you would think that you would be more to that approach than the team approach.
I firmly believe with all my heart that if you're going to be a successful leader, you have to put the team first.
I love it.
And so I think that when you do that and you make it about the team, when you make it about the mission and the team versus yourself, I believe that, the cream is going to rise and you're naturally going to rise as a leader. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes and there's going to be some bumps in the road. You have to eat a slice of humble pie every now and then, and that's fine. But you have to be willing to accept that challenge and put the men and women first. And if you do that, without even thinking about whether or not you're leading, naturally you're going to lead. And more importantly, the troops are going to look at you as such. They know. You can make believe that you're this, that, and you can say that you're an expert in leadership. You can't fool, especially in the firehouse and around the firehouse kitchen. They know who's who and what's what.
Chief, I love this. This is the thing. Like, if you have to know that if you have to tell yourself that you're the leader, you're not the leader. Like, leaders lead because it's natural for them. They don't lead because it's something they're working at to, make sure everybody's aware of it, right? The true leaders are the ones that literally are in the background and putting everybody else forward and capitalizing on the strengths and focusing on the weakness of those that can come up to those strengths for the better good. And like, there's so many chest-pounding guys that want to talk about leadership. There's guys that sit around the firehouse. There's guys that speak nationally. All they do is talk about leadership. Are you a leader at home? Like, do you lead? And I think that's a big conversation, right?
I agree 100%. And we just put on a recruit class of 23 new firefighters, and they started the academy today. Yesterday, Monday, day one. And I kind of go off of this thing that Frank Viscuso and Mike Turpak wrote in their operational guide book that they wrote a while back ago.
Yes.
And there's 25 things that a probationary firefighter should know. And since then, I know Frank Viscuso has updated and changed it, but I use those 25 tips to to kind of indoctrinate the new firefighters prior to them going to the academy, right? It's my version of reading them the riot act and letting them know how they're supposed to be acting. And one of the things is leading, and even at that level, as a probationary firefighter, a firefighter that or probie that knows absolutely nothing, you can still lead by leading
100%.
by example. And
100%.
I've seen probies come into the firehouse, and what happens? The other firefighters in that house, they start stepping up their game. Because now they want to show the new firefighter what they know, which is great. It makes us better on the job. Everybody starts stepping up their level of training. Everybody wants to be a role model, and it's excellent. But sometimes that senior firefighter doesn't want to be, overshadowed by that either a probie or a rookie or 1 year guy, 2 year guy. It doesn't matter. So everyone within their own right, like stay in your lane, but everybody within their own right can absolutely lead.
I love watching.
Yeah.
I love watching insecure senior men, and not even senior men. Insecure guys in the firehouse get threatened when somebody new comes in, and they know something maybe a little bit more than they do. And instead of embracing that and being like, "Yo, Joe, show me what you know, man. I didn't know that." Right? They feel threatened by it, so what they do is they shut that guy down, and that is where we miss. That is where we don't get growth, and that's where we don't grow as the team. is when we're shutting people down, dismissing people because we're threatened by them. And we have a lot of insecurity today, Chief. We have a lot of leaders, quote unquote, that are very insecure in their own abilities, and so they're certainly not going to promote those around them.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny. It reminds me of so when I took my captain's exam. We don't have in North Hudson. We don't have lieutenants. It was captain, battalion, deputy chief. And when I took my first captain's exam, I just made the cut by 10 days. So you have to have 3 years on the job prior to
Right.
taking your promotional exam. I had 3 years just by 10 days. So I barely had enough seniority to take this exam. And I signed up for it. I registered for the test, and I was studying, I was reading, and I would sit down in the firehouse kitchen for hours. At that time, I had barely 3 years on the job, but I was the rookie in that house. So I would go to bed after everyone went to bed. I would stay up, mop the floors, make sure the dishes were put away, make sure the house was secure, and then I would sit down in the firehouse kitchen and just open up the books and start studying. So one day, a firefighter walks past, and it wasn't one of our guys. I think he was on overtime or on the mutual, and he walks past and he stops and looks at me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm reading. He goes, "You taking the test?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Learn how to be a fireman first. You have 2 days on the job." Like, gave me one of those things, and I kind of just say, "Yeah, I know." He says, "Look, you're not going to overcome the seniority point. There's no way. You don't have enough seniority. But good luck." Now you tell me I can't do something, right?
Sure.
I'm going to show you I can do it, right? But
Sure.
that was my first, probably one of my first experiences on the job in the fire service, of someone having. To me, it felt like an insecurity because he was worried about what I was going to do. You know what? Worry about yourself. Why don't you go back into the dorm and study, hit the books? Because I felt like when I was studying, it wasn't just helping me for the promotional exam. I felt like it was helping me for the job.
Chief, it's
Because
making you
sometimes,
better, smarter,
absolutely,
wiser. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, I had my pro V year. I had a very aggressive, old school, salty captain. In that first year in the job, I was working squad 10 in West New York. We were catching work. We were going to fires. And he would take every opportunity to show me the ropes and show me, what was what. We would stay later at fires, or even an alarm activation, something that's not as sexy as a fire. Told me how to shake the building down, what to look for, pulling the gooseneck, checking this, checking that. Right. So I learned a lot. But when I left, I was detailed to another captain that was, on his way out, maybe not as aggressive. So I had to supplement my education by reading these books. And I felt like it made me better. I had a better understanding of building construction, fire behavior, and so it made me better at my job. And so I knew that if I was going to take this promotional exam, then I better know what the hell I'm talking about, right? I better
Yes.
know, I have an understanding, because it is going to be my responsibility. So, fortunately, I scored well enough to get promoted on my first captain's exam on the first round. And I mean, there were guys on the job that were like, "Who the hell is Pratz?" I mean, there was firefighters I hadn't even met yet on the job,
Yeah.
you know? And so I had a lot to prove. And my first two firefighters that were assigned to me, and I always say, it's funny, it wasn't like they were assigned to me. If I felt like I was assigned to them. Anthony Villa was my deputy at the time, and he made sure that I was in the house with two very senior,
Yeah.
seasoned guys that
Right.
weren't going to let me get away with shit. And so, listen, as a new company officer, one of my first conversations was, "Listen, you guys have been on the job longer than me. I don't know more than you because I'm a captain. I just scored well on the promotional exam. I'm going to lean on you guys to help me through this process. And we're going to go out and we're going to train and we're going to work." Right. And we did. And it worked out. Right. And so you have to be humble enough to realize, you know what? You're in charge. Doesn't mean you're a leader. Right. Being in charge doesn't mean it's not the same thing. But you have to kind of step up your game if you put in that position, and you have to be willing to accept the responsibility and be willing to put in the extra work.
Humble is the word, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Humility matters. Accountability matters. These are traits that we need more of. And to be put on as a captain early on in a career, you got to have that, or you're not going to make it. You're not going to cut it.
No, you're not. And the guys are going to let you know,
Oh,
you know.
you hit it,
And
man. That's I was looking for that. You hit it, bro. That's
and
it.
if you have thin skin, it's going to get to you. But you know, if you have humility and you put the team first, like I said before, and you know that you're there for a reason, and you understand what your role is, right? Then it's going to make everything else easier. You can't control what other people are going to think about you. You can't control what perception people, oh, this guy's, 3 years on the job. Well, so I was in my fifth year when I became a captain. So by the time the list came out, I was in my fifth year. So you can't control what people are going to think about you or what opinions they're going to have. You can only control what you do, right, about it, what you do for yourself and what reputation you're going to establish for yourself. Because in my opinion, it's hard to develop a good reputation. It's a lot easier to develop a bad reputation. So you got to put the work in.
It, put the work in is right. Every window has to be clean. The trim's got to be pulled. Your company's got to be put together. You got to be in the right spot when you need to be there, and you need to make sure it's happening every single time. I's dotted, T's crossed. If you have a target on you, you better get out there and prove it times 10. You have to. But that comes to the individual. And, it takes, like you said, it takes work. It takes work. You got to be willing to put that work in. So that's pretty cool. And I know you were in some busy companies, right? So squad company, right? And then you moved up. I think you were, you were in Tower 3, right? All busy companies. And back then in your early days, North Hudson was having fires. I remember a little background, right? Chief, North Hudson Regional was one of the first regionalized departments that took 5 independent fire departments in 5 little cities and put them together under one roof. And I believe there were a tremendous amount of growing pains. But, you only know what you know. And, here we are 24 years later since that consolidation. And I have to think it's pretty seamless now, no?
Yeah, I'd say so. And when you say 5 little cities, the population is not like,
thank you.
I'm just wondering, for those that don't know, it is geographically, you look at the map and those 5 cities together geographically would be somewhat smaller than Jersey City.
Yes.
But population wise, we have 3 of the most densely populated cities in the country. We have the second hilliest, North Bergen would be the second hilliest city, outside of San Francisco in the country. We have the Holland Tunnel, we have the Weehawken Ferry System. We have every single type of building construction that you could think of, residential, industrial sections, the railroad, Amtrak, light rail.
And some of the best ethnic food you could find anywhere in the country.
Let me tell you something. You will not go hungry.
You guys eat well. Yeah.
We do. You just drive up and down Burger Line Avenue, which is probably the longest stretch of restaurants and businesses in one localized area than I could think of. And you'll find a little bit of everything. It's like what is it? Epcot Center, right? It has
Epcot, right?
Epcot,
Disney,
right? That has all the nations, right? And that's
Yep.
sort of like what it feels like in a sense. Maybe not as safe, but yeah, but as far as having your choice of restaurants and that sort of thing, and you'll see it. It's changed over time. As different ethnicities come in, the restaurants start changing. But there is there's definitely plenty of restaurants. Next time you're in that area, look me up, man. I'll definitely take you to a couple different places.
My buddy always brings home these Peruvian chickens that are just like with this super hot sauce. It's just out of control.
It's funny you say that. My wife's family, my wife's from a Peruvian background.
Okay.
And the very first time I had that rotisserie chicken with it's like a special hot sauce that
that hot sauce will kick your ass.
Yeah, it's like crack though.
It is.
You can't get rid of it. It's great. It's delicious. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool. But that then speaks to the job there too, because it is quite diverse, and you're talking single family to high rises. The infrastructure is abound. And so how did you find your way to the SOC? How did you find your way to the SOC division, like, Special Operations Command?
So usually in North Hudson, when you get assigned to one of the SOC companies, and you're selected to start taking the UASI, USAR, Metro Urban Strike Team collapse classes and so on and so forth, you have to have a certain number of years on. 3 years, 4 years is going to be usually the minimum. But I was fortunate enough to be selected early on in my career and start taking these classes like pretty much right away. I want to say within my second year, I was already taking some of these classes that were being run. Lakehurst at the time is where we were running those classes. And I fell in love with all the special operations
Hmm.
facets. I mean, rope rescue, rope work, confined space, collapse, so on and so forth. And it was something that I gravitated towards. And my wife always says, ever since I've left the Marines, I've been looking for the next big adventure, or, she goes, you're not happy unless you're hanging off the side of a building somewhere, or doing something like that. And that's sort of, and that's what I've been like leaning towards, for a majority of my career. And as a battalion chief, when I got promoted to battalion chief, I was asked to take over the SOC unit.
Right.
Are we still on? Because I don't see your video.
We're here. Don't worry about it. The
Okay, all right.
program's buffering. The
Okay, got it.
program buffers, so it's saving as it goes, and so you'll see. Don't worry about it. Just keep going.
Okay,
No
all
worries.
right,
I
my
see
fault.
you.
All right, all
Nope,
right,
you're
cool.
good. You're good. No worries.
Yeah. So when I was promoted to battalion chief, at the time, the SOC chief was Anthony Venezia, who was a deputy. And they approached me, and they called me into the chief's office, and they said that they felt that I would be a good fit, between him and Chief Montaigne. They felt that it would be a good fit for me, to take over as a SOC chief, and I agreed, and I was excited for the opportunity. Um, Traditionally, that's been a position that's been an administrative position, a
Right.
chief that works out of headquarters 5 days a week and that sort of thing. And one of my caveats was, listen, I'll take over as a SOC chief, but I want to continue doing this even when I go on the line. I mean, I had no dreams and aspirations of being an administrative chief. I mean, there's a lot to learn, and you definitely attain a newfound respect for the job when you do some administrative work, some behind the scenes things. But I knew that my position was out on the line with the guys, right? I've always been a hands-on type person. So they agreed, and they said, yeah, you go on the line, you continue as the special operations chief as long as you don't mind doing the extra work. And not only do I not mind, but I relish in it. I love it. And so,
Yeah.
once I got promoted to deputy chief, I just, continued doing it. And that's something I don't see, giving up anytime soon.
It's a prestigious position, right? Truly, a lot of times in more urban areas, SOC divisions or the Special Operations Command, the rescue companies, squad companies, and all the disciplines that come with that, they typically find the more dynamic people to fit those roles because it is quite a task to, be good and efficient at all those different disciplines, right? So
Yeah.
there's something to be said for when you become the leader. We've been talking about leadership. When you become the deputy chief of the SOC division, it's quite a prestigious spot because you get to do so very much and work with some unbelievably dynamic people. So I have to think it's very, very rewarding for you.
It is, and not just within North Hudson, because within
Hmm.
North Hudson, what I love about it is the young firefighter that comes up to me and says, "Pete, I want to get on one of the SOC units. I want to go take structural collapse. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be involved." And they know that it's extra work, and members in the SOC unit train more than everyone else, and they don't get paid more money. It's not like there's a financial incentive. It's because guys want to be best. They want to be part of the elite, and I truly believe that the SOC unit in North Hudson is definitely one of the best. And because of the caliber of, I don't want to say recruit, but candidate, right, that you get, that we get, that want to be part of the SOC unit, and the the fact that we're part of this Metro USAR,
Right.
strike team under the UASI umbrella, and we work closely together with all the other cities that are part of, the UASI Metro Urban Strike Team. And by the way, we've been extremely busy, this past year.
Oh yeah.
I believe we've had probably 35 different UASI responses. Some of them are on a smaller scale, partial responses, and some of them are full scale responses, such as the Newark incident and the more recent building collapse that we had in East Rutherford, where a
Yeah.
construction worker was rescued. I mean, we've been busy, but what's rewarding for me is, in addition to being a SOC chief, I sit on the UASI's Metro USAR strike team committee, and incident command staff, and so we kind of organize the training. We make sure that we have annual drills, and we decide what exercises or what scenarios we're gonna have as part of the drill, what things we need to work on, what are the areas that we want to test the capabilities of all these different cities. Um, and we've gotten to see over the years, and I've been, on the strike team committee since I was a battalion chief, and we've seen leaps and bounds. These members just kind of stop, and the
Yeah.
level of training that we've been able to provide them with different contractors that we provide during the training sessions. Um, no, they're all in, and they're super proud of what they do. They're an excellent group, and I would put them up against any USAR team in the country. I mean, they've
Yeah.
really done a great job.
Just to break it down a little bit for people that aren't familiar, and Chief, feel free to jump in if I get any of this wrong, but we have our urban search and rescue team, which is Task Force New Jersey Task Force 1, which is made up of individuals and different groups that are deployed throughout the world. But then locally at home, we have the UASI, which is that New York Metro Strike Team, the urban initiative, where each county has a technical rescue and equipment and trained people, as well as individual cities on larger cities have their own as well. And so if there's a regional response, a building collapse, a trench, confined space, something like that, they are the ones, that local UASI team will get dispatched first. And then if they need to escalate it, then they can bring in more of the team or the entire task force into the scene. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I have to think, though, with all the global response and focus we've had on hurricanes and natural disasters and the way we mobilize and so on, it was only inevitable, and especially after September 11th, which impacted us greatly, and you know that. I mean, we had a front row seat to everything that was happening, and all became involved. Especially after September 11th, the USAR and UASI programs exploded, and the need for technical and specialized training was at a paramount. It was at the forefront of what we need to do. And I think what's really interesting is, with the area that we're from, Chief, and I'd love some of your feedback on this, we're fortunate that we have so many resources at our fingertips and available to us, and that also includes funding. So we have the ability to really build out these teams and educate our people and give our people every tool they need to perform such tasks, right?
Absolutely. We're definitely fortunate to be resource rich in this
Yeah.
area because of funding. And what's great is that it's allowed all these northern New Jersey counties to be able to develop these technical rescue teams, have, you know, 11, 12, 13 pieces of technical rescue or heavy rescue apparatus that are outfitted almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Same equipment on every piece of apparatus. In addition to that, we have North Hudson has a shoring unit in addition to
Right.
the technical rescue truck. So you have some departments that also have a shoring unit that would respond. I mean, we could build a house with the amount of equipment that's on this piece of apparatus.
I believe it. I've seen Hackensack, so I know
Yeah,
exactly what's in there. Yeah, right.
absolutely. So they're outfitted the same, and so we're outfitted the same. The level of training is the same. When we run our annual drills, you always have the same groups, the same shifts that are training together. So we organize it so that when we schedule these trainings, you have the same groups and the same shifts that are training together, so that when you respond on a real call, on a real incident, you have familiar faces. Because in addition to the training and making sure that you have the proper equipment and it's being maintained, developing those relationships, interagency relationships is huge, it's paramount. So um, yeah, I mean, we're definitely super fortunate to be able to have that. And what we started doing was we actually started um, making a lot of our training into train to trainer, so
Hmm.
that we can become self-sufficient and take that, whether it's high angle rope rescue or confined space or trench, we can take that and go back to our agencies and train our own personnel because we have members that are trained to trainer. So
It's
that's
commitment to being
definitely
all in
something.
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What is it about SOC that really makes you tick? Like, there are certain guys, like, I love being a fireman.
Mhm.
The other stuff, yeah, it's cool. But, like, it's not my thing. Like, I don't need to scale off a building. I've done it. Don't need to do it. You know, I don't, it's not for me. So what is it for you? Is it just the additional challenge? I don't know. What is it? I always ask guys that are into all these different technical skills and so on. What is it? What is it about that? Just that personal challenge?
Yeah, you know what? That's such a great freaking question. It's such a great question. Let's think about that. No, but it's funny because I've never thought about why. It's always
Yeah.
it just is. I never thought about why do I like this so much. It's something that I
Because
just
you got
always
guys that are
gravitated
just
towards.
they just want to be a backstep fireman for 20 years,
And
but
that's
they want to
fine.
be the best. They want to be the best bar man. They want to be the best nozzle man, and that's what they dedicate their career to, right?
Yeah.
And then there's
Listen, I
other
don't care
guys
if
that are like,
if you're a garbage man, if you be the
sure,
best garbage, whatever it is, be the best of whatever you are.
100. We need every single position, and we need the very best at every position we have.
Absolutely.
I just love asking these guys that have this like crazy death wish to jump off buildings and go underground and, you know, climb through underground tubes and all this crazy crap that you guys do. What is it?
But
What
that's the
fuels
beauty
you?
of that's the beauty of being a chief officer now. I don't have to go into the tunnel. You know, but that being said, I've never wanted to hold a position that I was responsible. If I have to tell someone to do something, if I have to give an
Right.
order on the fire ground, whether it's on a
Sure.
fire ground, whether it's at a
Hmm.
technical rescue incident, I want to know that I've done it. Right? If I need them to breach that concrete, I want to know I've done it. If I want guys to get on the roof and cut a hole in the roof, I want to know that I've done it. That's why it's always been important for me, you know, not just in SOC, but as a firefighter moving up the ranks, it was important for me to hold every position, work on an engine, work on the busiest engine, work on a squad, work on a rescue, work on a truck, and then be a captain in those positions as well before I move into the position of chief officer, so that when I give an order and I say, look, this is what we need, the guys turn around and they know that the order's coming from me and I've been there and I've done that. You know, so like the
That
guys
is.
that are, go ahead, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead. No,
No,
finish your thought, please.
so the guys that are doing special operations that are going into confined space, they know I've been there, you know, and so I've done that, and it was maybe it's an adrenaline rush, maybe it's doing something that's different, where you have these high risk, low frequency types events that requires you to be on your freaking game, you know, like
Yeah.
in the fire service, you know, I have guys all the time, especially during the warmer months. If we get a report of smoke, report of fire, or even alarm activation, I want guys hitting the hydrant. I want guys setting up the outriggers. I want the aerial up to the roof, because, you know, in North Hudson, it's hard for us because it's so congested. We have to use every opportunity that we can to train. So if
Sure.
at that moment we have the street and it's closed down and the police officers have the street closed, let's train. Let's put the aerial up. Let's do this and that. So you know, for me, that's extremely important. But it's important for me for the guys to understand that I've been there and I've done that.
That is where experience matters as a boss, as a chief, as somebody that is in charge of other people or designing and putting together the playbook. We need people that have that experience, and experience comes in a lot of different forms, obviously, right? But we want the best experience you can have is doing the actual situation in which people are being asked to do, right? To be put in. But there's other ways too where, you know, people aren't, because this is the thing with all the tech rescue stuff, right? It's not you said high risk, low frequency, of course. How many times you picking off a guy from a scaffolding or a building collapse or a trench? You might have one in your career of 25 years, right?
That could be the case. We're fortunate enough in North Hudson where we have so much going on,
Sure.
especially on the
Sure.
waterfront, where we have, you know, new buildings going up. We have construction workers. We have, you know, we have 495. We have the Helix, the Holland Tunnel. We have so much going on that even though it is low frequency, we get it, right? And it happens, but it's nowhere near, not the same level of experience, like you said, as going to fires. So
Right.
you have to be
Right.
that much more on your game. And that's why, as a committee member, I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done with the UASI Metro Urban Strike Team to make sure that, you know, we're training our members, making sure that we're stepping up the level of training that we're doing. Frank Bellina in Newark, he's a mastermind of setting up like the special operations playground for us. And every
Yeah.
time that we run a drill, it becomes more and more complex.
It's
Even
cool.
now, we've done some stuff with active shooter, and that's something that we have in North Hudson, and it's under the special operations umbrella, where we have a rescue task force team. We have the equipment, the ballistic gear, and as the law enforcement liaison, I work closely with the police departments in North Hudson, which we have 5 different police departments, to make sure that we train together. In addition to the SWAT team, making sure that we train together on active shooter response. So again, these are things that don't happen all the time, and I hope never. That's one thing I hope to never have to go to. But if it happens, we're prepared, right? And we
This
train
is
so much on it.
this is this is that big part of the conversation, right? Is that there has to be a tremendous amount of accountability, and accountability came up earlier in our conversation when we talked about being a young boss and following through on what you need to do to prove yourself and all that. You got to hold yourself accountable, but this is where the people that are involved with disciplines like this, there's a tremendous amount of accountability that has to go into it, right? Listen, firemen, I go to fires. Like, I've stretched the line 100 times. Like, I've forced doors. And obviously, every fire is not the same. Like, there's going to be people, oh, this and that. I'm not simplifying it. But what I am saying, though, is in my downtime, I don't need to be tying 15 different knots and doing hasty harness pickoffs and all this crazy stuff, because I don't need to do that, right? So this is where accountability really comes in for those individuals, which I think goes to what I asked you, is what fuels you? I bet you that's a big part of it. I bet you it's staying busy, holding yourself accountable, and being good at anything you put your mind to. You hold yourself accountable for it. I love that.
I think even more importantly, now that you mentioned that, I think what fuels me when it comes to this is knowing that my guys are good at that, right? So
There you go.
knowing that we've kind of set the stage where I'm not on duty today. I got off duty this morning. If something happens today and there's a high angle rescue, these guys are going to get the job done. I don't need to be there, right? They're going to get it done, because of the groundwork that we laid,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's extremely important. And us as incident commanders, right? Whether you're battalion chief, deputy chief of department, whatever the case is, you're ultimately responsible for the level of preparation that your department or your men and women, on the fire ground. You're responsible. It's on you. It's on your shoulders. And so for me, it's important to make sure that we train for any possible incident that we may encounter. Come up with different contingency plans. Even critique our own trainings. Like, a lot of times at every fire, or after every incident, we hold a formalized fire critique. But even during training sessions, and drills that we run, we critique it again, and over again. And I always critique myself as an incident commander first, because at the end of the day, I know that the firefighters are going to get the job done. We tell them to
Right.
run through a brick wall, they're going to do it. Right? Whatever we tell them to do, they're going to do it, because they trust in us. They trust in the process, and they know that that we're going to keep them safe, or at least they hope that we are. Right? We should. Um, but it really comes down to us using sound tactics and principles, accountability, making sure that we're keeping our guys safe, making sure that we're not, losing track of what the incident priorities are. If we, it could be a type of fire or an incident or a structure that we've never operated in, right? It doesn't matter. Accountability is accountability. Making sure you have a rig team in place, making sure you have accountability, making sure your guys are not freelancing, making sure that as an incident commander, you're taking a look at, all the cues and visual clues that you need to take a look at from the exterior of the building, having that communication with the guys that are operating inside, decentralizing the fire ground, right? These are things that are basics and should be applied to any type of incident, whether it's a stock incident, whether it's a hazmat call, whether it's a mass shooting, or whether it's a basic structure fire, right? It all applies, and it's on us as the leaders and incident commanders to make sure that our members are operating safely. And when I say safety, I don't mean that we're not taking risks, right? Because in my opinion, they come first, right? And it was something I asked the recruits, and I ask this all the time: who comes first? Is it the civilians or us? Sometimes they want to give you this PR response and think they're saying the right thing by saying we come first, but in my opinion, it's them. That's why we do what we do. We don't become firemen so we can wear cool T-shirts and put stickers on our cars, right? We become firemen so that we can protect the public. And you know what? It doesn't mean we're not gonna. It's not a calculated risk, and you're not using that risk versus reward, but you are taking risks, and that's why we do what we do.
Well said. I was just sitting here just nodding, smiling. I mean, this is why you're a chief. I get it. No, that was really well said, Chief. And I agree with you 100% across the board. And I just want to circle back before we transition, because I want to talk about promotional prep. I want to talk about all of that as well. But one thing you said, you keep putting your people forward. And that to me is really important in conversation. For you, though, incredibly rewarding when you said, like, hey, they might have a job today and I'm not working today, and I have the utmost trust that the companies that are working today will be able to handle and mitigate the issue, whatever the response is and whatever needs to be done. That has to be incredibly rewarding for you.
It is. If we get something that's a special operations type of call, my dispatchers call me. They have my cell phone. It's on the CAD. They know to call me. They notify me. They tell me what's going on. If it's
Right.
something that's involving law enforcement, I have my law enforcement counterparts that I can call and say, hey, what's going on? What do you have? What information?
Sure.
But
Sure.
other than that, I'm not hands on. I don't need to go. Right. I don't need to. I live down in Old Bridge. I'm not driving up to North Hudson. And plus, I don't have a city vehicle. They don't provide me with a city car. And you know what? I might be able to work that out, but then I have to work Monday to Friday, and this ain't happening. So,
That's right.
I'm good where I'm at. But there are times where that I will respond, and I'm fortunate enough where Chief Woods, Deputy Chief Woods from Patterson, who's on the
Sure.
UOSC committee with me, he lives around the corner from my house. We actually drove into the Newark incident together. He has a city
Got
vehicle,
it.
so he may or may not have driven me. For anyone that's listening, I
That's
can't confirm nor
fantastic.
deny.
That's right.
But yeah, I don't have to worry about that. The guys, if I'm off on vacation or whatever the case is, they're gonna get the job done. In fact, I almost hope that something happens on my shift. Not that I feel like my guys are more trained than anyone else,
No,
but I
you just
feel
want to
like
be
my
there.
guys are more trained than everyone else. So, so I mean, listen,
There you go.
me having my own shift and I'm the SOC commander, right? I'm not gonna go above and beyond and make sure that my guys are, when I first took over as a tour commander, I decided to work on the culture of my shift, of my tour, right? And I did a quick small little culture and leadership class for the guys as a presentation. And I told them, I said, listen, I want to start off by creating a culture here on this shift, right? We're not going to be a shift anymore. We're not a platoon. We're the third division, and we're the tip of the spear. And so I created a logo for us and all that kind of stuff. And it was great because it kind of grew. And guys were saying, oh, yeah, we're just the tip, making references to just the tip, right? And so but it was great because it spread like wildfire. Guys
Yeah.
were saying it, guys were using it, and now we kind of developed our own. In fact, one of the other deputy chiefs was working for me the other day, and every time he picked up the phone, he said, "Tip of the spear." Right, tip of the spear. So but it's excellent, and some guys have fun with it. But the fact of the
Yeah.
matter is that we have an identity, right? And it's
Yeah.
a culture thing, right? Who we
Matters.
are, how we do it, what
That's
are the
right.
expectations, and then so everyone could live up to that, and then move past that as well, and raise the bar, But
I love it.
yeah, man, it's great, man. I freaking love my job, man, and for being somebody, I think about that all the time. I'm so grateful, especially for the fact that I almost didn't even go down this route,
You're almost a cop, bro.
I was almost a cop, yeah,
Almost a
almost a
cop.
cop,
And
yeah.
if you look at it now, like, I have so many friends that went the police route. I was a criminal justice major myself in college. And I had tested for a bunch of police jobs too. And, you just, every one of them I talked to today, they are beaten. They are worn
Tough
out.
job.
It's a tough job.
It
It's
is. It
gotten
is tough.
harder and harder.
It has, and it's unfortunate with the political climate and all that kind of stuff. And
Oh,
obviously, we're not going to get
100%.
into that kind of
No,
topic,
right. Yeah.
but it is extremely difficult. And I have very, very, very good friends of mine in the law enforcement field, and because
Yeah.
of my position as the law enforcement liaison for the department,
Sure.
I work closely with
Sure.
these guys, and it's tough, man.
Yeah.
They have a very tough job. But yeah, so we go above and beyond to make sure that we work closely together at every single incident. There was a class that I actually put together, safe law enforcement operations on the fire ground. And it's not something I invented. It's out there, but I kind of tailor made it to what we do in North Hudson, and I've been able to deliver it to most of the police departments that we work with. Because there's a lot of new cops, a lot of young cops. They're aggressive. They want to do the right thing, but they don't realize what
Sure.
the right thing is. In addition to, positioning their squad cars, a lot of these guys want to run in and do the right thing. And they think that the right thing is being aggressive and going in there and trying to make a grab, but that's not the right thing. And look, I tell them, I said, you good intentions. It's not like, but you don't know what you don't know, and so.
Orientation's important for the fireground, for police,
Absolutely.
hands down. I've been to firegrounds where they're breaking plate glass window on a commercial building before we had a line stretched.
Right.
What are you doing? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just they hopped up in the moment.
They
think it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So I agree.
Right thing. We want to do the right thing.
That's right.
They want to do it.
We all do. We all do.
You don't know what you don't know sometimes.
That's correct. So speaking of not knowing what you don't know, educate me about the promotional process. So how did you get mixed up with Chief Turpak and so on? How did this
Chief
all
Montaigne.
come to be?
I
Montaigne. Chief Montaigne. Yeah.
I stepped in shit, really. So they had their eye on me because I've done well through the promotional process.
You were that young buck, man.
I moved up pretty quick, and so they reached out to me one day around, I think it was 2018. They were running a class. I was a battalion chief, and they said, "Why don't you come do a class with us and see what you got?" Right? I said, "Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Right? You don't have to twist my arm." So what I did was I wrote up a couple scenarios. I wrote up some multiple choice type and oral based scenarios based off of their format, but I did my own thing and I submitted it to them, and that was almost like my resume. Where I said, here's what I have, here's my portfolio, right?
Right.
They looked at it, they liked it, and so that they invited me to one of their company officer classes. And I sat in and I was kind of just observing and absorbing. And it was at the time it was Turpak, Montaigne, and Jimmy Drennan from Jersey City. And Jimmy Drennan was kind of like on his way out. He retired and he was kind of pulling back a little bit, and so they were going to be looking for a third guy. So it was like perfect opportunity for me. And I sat with them and ran the class, and they liked what I had to offer. And we continued working together. And then right around COVID was the turning point between me just being an adjunct professor or instructor with them to actually being a permanent fixture with Promotional Prep. During COVID, everyone was going to remote learning. And, we still have promotional tests that were coming up, and there was no way for us to actually run a class and be face to face and run an actual live class. So, I was watching my kids, doing their remote learning at home. And I said, you know what? I came up with a proposal and did a whole PowerPoint. I called them up and I said, listen, I have an idea. Right? Let me know what you think. Let's meet through Zoom, and I'm going to pitch my idea. You guys let me know what you think. So I came up with this whole program, this webinar at home, on demand, company officer, written and oral program that we can market to students that were getting ready to take their promotional exam, but didn't have a way of sitting down with an actual tutor and instructor.
Yeah, right.
We could do a webinar through Zoom, right? And I was learning the whole process because I didn't know much about Zoom at the time, right? So through Zoom, we can do a pre-recorded webinar. We can have PDFs, student handouts attached to it, and we can develop a package to run the students through our in-person type program, but an on-demand online version that's theirs to keep, and they can have it, at their disposal. And so they loved it, and so we went with it. And I pretty much built the program, and that eventually won me a seat as an actual partner with Promotional Prep. We met for Christmas, and we had we took our wives out for dinner. I believe it was 2022, and then they offered me a partnership, man, and I was
it's fantastic.
They made me an offer I could not refuse.
Yeah, right. So Promotional Prep. So just give me the background of it. So it is a company of consulting, educating, and working with people looking to promote up the job. Now in New Jersey, right? So it's civil service. So there's set tests that guys take for different positions, right? So you guys are doing all the test prep and working with your prospects, your students, and getting them the tutoring they need to do or hopefully score well on these tests, right?
And not just promotion, but the entry level exam. So
okay.
Anyone looking to take the test that is fortunate enough to live And that's part of, like, for anyone that doesn't know, you have to, it's such a competitive job because in addition to everyone wanting to be a firefighter, if you don't live in a jurisdiction, in a city or a town or a county
Yeah.
where there's a career fire department that hires off of that list, then your chances
You're
are
not getting
you're
hired.
not getting hired. And
No.
especially after 9/11, when military veterans were coming home and taking these civil service exams, right? After that, they go right. Veterans go right to the top of the list as long as they pass the test. They go right to the top of the list. So in my class alone, and after the group that we've hired, I mean, I want to say close to 2/3 of our whole workforce is all military veteran.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, we teach civilians that want to become firefighters how to take the entry level exam, and then of course we
Okay.
teach firefighters for different ranks. Level one, company officer for the departments that have lieutenants, and level two for the departments that don't have lieutenants and have captains. Battalion chief, deputy chief, and chief of department. And each one of these ranks has a whole different structure as far as how what's involved in the test. The civil
Yeah.
service comes out with an orientation guide, gives you a reading list, tells you, gives you an idea of what type of format they're using for the test. But there really is a science behind it because, even understanding how to read the textbooks, right? And when I say how to read, somebody say, well, I know how to read. You don't need to teach me how to read. It's not that. It's how to read as if you were developing a test yourself, because you
Yeah.
have to think like the test developers are thinking. So that you're not wasting your time. I was never one to be able to sit through a book and read chapters 1 through 20, right? I had to kind of take a look at that book, look at a chapter, dissect it, write my own Cliff Notes version of that chapter, and then save it. So that what I did was I implemented my different learning styles. I'm reading, I'm repeating it, I'm writing it down. I would even record it and listen to myself, read my Cliff Notes version. So now you're using all these different learning styles to be able to
Yeah. Right.
get this information to sink in. So, um, but yeah, we and the fact that Chief Turpak and we've developed as Promotional Prep, we've worked with other cities outside of New Jersey to help develop their promotional testing. So we have an inside view of how these test assessors are thinking and developing these tests. So it is something that I think, based off of the successes that firefighters and officers have had with their promotions, they call us back and they're like, I think that most, I don't even know what number it is, but when we had our entry level exam, I couldn't tell you how many kids were in this class that were sons and daughters of current firefighters and fire officers. And then we
That
had the
speaks
same,
volumes.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
we had the same thing with our promotional exams. They're sending us their kids, you know. I had my son sitting in on our entry level exam. He's in college right now, but he was sitting through that class. We have a very, very high success rate of being able to get these guys into a position where they're doing well enough where they can get promoted. I mean, there is a science
Wow.
behind it.
It's such a competitive market here. Like, people don't, when I tell people what the process is to get hired, it's a job to get your job. You have to physically uproot and move to the community that you want to work in. You have to physically live there.
Right.
Change your lifestyle, bills, license, everything has to be in that address. Like, you can't just it's a statewide test, but every municipality pulls their list from the state test. So you have to pick a department that you want to work for and then go move there and crush every step of the process, because if you don't, you're not getting hired.
Yeah, and you have to build that residency prior,
Oh,
to,
100%.
because they're going to go back and see how long did you just move in just to take the test, and then you have to stay there. If you're lucky enough to get on the job, depending on your municipality, you'll have to stay for at
Your
least a
neighbors
year.
need to know you. People need to see your car there. They want to know that you're coming and going. Like, they send investigators out. Like, this is no BS.
No,
Like, it
no.
is hard to get hired in the state of New Jersey, and you have to comply to the rules. And when you
Absolutely.
try to circumvent the rules, yeah, you're going to get gigged. I know so many guys that have gotten gigged because
Yeah,
they just wouldn't commit to the process.
and especially if they're looking to hire a certain number and they need to
Yeah.
eliminate one or two guys to get to that person, right? Politically,
See ya.
right? And then
Right.
if you have the slightest inconsistency in your application, you're out. You're done.
Yeah.
It's super competitive. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
I
even
think-
had
I think-
We've even had candidates that legitimately lived in that city were
Right.
kicked off because there was an inconsistency, and then had to go back and sue to get the job. And it's not competitive.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then I know some of the packets and the hurdles that guys have to go through. It's a test within a test, right? The other thing too, though, is that whatchamacallit, I just lost my train of thought, Chief. I had this other point I wanted to make, and I just totally spaced it.
Well, good.
Oh
But I
well.
do have something to
So
add.
yeah,
I
go.
do have something to add.
Yeah,
Um,
go, please.
so when I took my entry level exam way back when, the physical fitness portion of the exam was
Mm,
it's still timed event, but right now it's pass fail. Where I took my test, it wasn't pass fail. It was a timed event, and how well you do and how quick you move through the obstacles determines
right.
where your rank is within that list. And I think that I don't know why they moved away from that. But I think that that's done a bit of a disservice, in my opinion, in the fire service, because we're seeing recruits that did not physically prepare, in my opinion,
Right.
hard enough to obtain this job, because it is a physical job,
I
and
also think part of the problem is too is some of these career departments have zero fitness program in their probie class.
you're right. And unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but my department is one of those, and so, what we try to do is we try to send our recruits to a fire academy that has,
Yeah.
a PT program, right? Where that's
Right.
going to kind of weed out those firefighters that aren't physically fit or capable. But sometimes, depending on what departments are running, what classes at the time, or not what departments, what academies are running, how many classes and how many students they have at the time, it just may not be feasible, and you kind of get stuck sending your recruits wherever you can get them sent
Yeah.
to, so that
I get it.
manpower wise you can get them back on the line, and so it's one of those things. But I if I had my way, it would be a requirement, just as if it was in the Marine Corps, where we had every year you had your annual fitness test. You had to pass this annual fitness test, and if you didn't, then there were consequences.
Yeah.
I wish that we can move to a place where that is a requirement within the state. Maybe start off with something where it becomes uh, a volunteer basis kind of program. Um, Unless you hire new firefighters, then it becomes mandatory, and then eventually it'll just be mandatory for everyone. So you kind of phase it in. That would
Yeah.
be great to see something like that.
And I think just to piggyback on what we were talking about, right? The promotion. I remember where I wanted to go with this, right? It's prep. It's preparation, right? You and your team are allowing for growth and education, knowledge and experience through preparation, so that when they're asked to take that test, they have every tool in their arsenal to attack it and do well. It's the same with sports now. Every kid that plays sports is getting trained, tutored. They're going for extra pitching help. They're doing strength and conditioning. Parents are giving their kids every tool. I know they are in my area. Every high school athlete, every 8th grade, middle school athlete is seeking extra outside of just what their team does. It's extra training, it's physical fitness, it's agility, it's speed, it's all those things. Well, if you're going to do it for a sport, why wouldn't you do it for your career, right? It just makes sense.
Yeah, that's why when we run our prep programs, we go above and beyond to teach these firefighters that are taking their promotional exam. We're not giving you the magic formula. We're not giving you
Right.
a script and saying
We're
memorize
not giving you the
this.
cheat code.
No, no, no.
Yeah,
We're
right.
not telling you to memorize this. We're teaching you about building construction. We're teaching you
Right.
about fire behavior. We're teaching you about making decisions on the fire ground, and why what's in the books is actually relevant in real life. I mean, there's certain things in the test world. There's like a test world and there's real world, right? And sometimes the things are not kind of don't vibe, because we do things just a little bit differently on the line or in the real world. But the things that we teach in our classes, we have students coming up to us like, man, I didn't realize that. I didn't understand the way that that the fire service elevators are supposed to operate. I didn't understand that this is the reason why, you don't want to use this stairwell for fire attack, and you want to use the other stairwell for evacuation. I didn't understand, the indicators of a backdraft. I think I
Sure.
can operate a little bit more
Sure.
safe. So it's not just here's a script and go memorize it, right? 'Cause I can do that for free. I can give somebody for free a script to say, hey, go memorize this, and this is what's going to help you on a test. It's not, because you never know what they're going to give you on a test. You have to know the information. And just like on the job, it's not a job of memorization. We have to know what the hell we're doing. We're not memorizing,
Yes.
right? We have to know what the hell we're doing. And when it comes to building construction, when it comes to fire behavior, where is fire and smoke going to spread throughout the structure? How is this building going to collapse, right? What are my concerns regarding this construction site? These are things that you have to physically know. You have to know these things. So we that's why we kind of started moving and conducting fire tactics courses as well, in addition to the fire promotional stuff, which we actually started doing. We ran a program for Nutley Fire Department, um, for their fire officers. And we took what we have with promotional prep, but we made it very specific to their jurisdiction, the way that
Yeah,
they
that's cool.
respond, their manpower. We
Sure.
used their buildings, right? I got
Hmm.
obtained a list of some of their target hazards and different buildings that they have in Nutley. And we put it up on a slide, just like we were doing a promotional prep kind of thing. But going into tactics that they would use in Nutley, right? Because in the promotional exam, they're telling you that you have, two engines, a ladder. This is the
Right.
response that you're having, right?
Right.
But in your specific department, you may just have one engine and one ladder. You might have five guys split between those companies. Your rig team is probably going to be a mutual aid company. Your third engine is probably going to be a mutual aid engine, right? You may not have a ladder company available because everybody jumped on the engine, right? So these are things that we started kind of making it tailor specific towards that particular department. So education is
So
so
important.
huge in the fire service, so huge.
Hmm.
Anybody that tells you that they're an expert in anything is full of shit, because we're this is like we're practitioners, right? We're something that we're constantly learning, because it's evolving. It's evolving. It's constantly changing and evolving. We got to stay up with those changes.
And that's coming from the deputy chief of SOC from North Hudson Regional. So think about that, right? It goes a very long way. Chief, what a great conversation today, man. It was awesome.
Yeah,
It was a lot of
yeah,
fun.
I had a lot of fun. Definitely awesome. Thank you.
What's next for you? Anything on the horizon? Anything exciting? I mean, now that COVID is way behind us now, I'm sure you guys are out and about teaching and bringing on a lot of classes and so on. But for your career, anything that you want to do, get to, anything important to you that we didn't hit on? I just want to make sure we capture everything you wanted to hit on, man. But I really enjoyed the conversation today. I think there's a lot of value in this for sure.
Yeah, man. I'm just gonna keep plugging along and keep doing what I'm doing.
Good.
I think that there's a lot of, ideas. Guys have kind of floated some ideas. I should do this. I should do that. I feel like I'm busy enough as it is right now doing what I'm doing, between, SOC is like a full-time job, right?
Yeah, it is.
I have a wife and kids. My daughter, you talked about sports. She plays very, very high level soccer. And there's no off days, and it's all
No.
year round. There's
Yep.
a trainer that we go to in Pennsylvania. It's an hour and a half away. She goes once a week. There's another trainer in Fairfield that we go to once a week. That's an hour away from us where I'm at now. So we're running around doing that, right? And then I'm on my phone, or we'll go to practice
Sure.
and I sit on my laptop and I'm putting a class together. We have a company officer class that we're running next month. We have a company officer class because there's a upcoming promotional exam for company officer level 1 and level 2, and there's a deputy chief exam as well that we're preparing for. So we're promotional prep is busy. We have our private students that we work with as well. We
Yeah.
have, we have to update our webinar program, but we're also working on our fire educational programs for fire departments. And whatever comes my way, I usually don't say no. I think I'm a glutton for punishment, and I usually try to get involved in as much as I can, just because I have a love for the job.
God, that sounds familiar. Yeah. Time. I don't know what time is anymore. My youngest, I'm gonna put it right here. My youngest turned 16, and she just joined the volunteer fire department. My daughter,
Wow.
third generation. She's the first third generation. I'm so excited. Like last night, I had her at the firehouse with me, and
Amazing.
they were outfitting her, getting her stuff, and like I don't push it on my kids. I mean, my kids grew up in this, and they know everything about the fire service, but I never saw any of them. I have 4 kids, and she's my last one. And all of a sudden, she was like, "I want to do this," and I was like, "Okay." Like, never forced it upon them. Didn't, she's a sophomore in high school, but wants to join the junior program, and hopefully we'll see where it goes from there. And So proud papa moment for me, for
Imagine.
sure.
I could
So,
imagine.
it was
It's
cool.
awesome.
It was very
Congratulations.
cool.
That's great. That's
So
one thing with the volunteer service, man, that I give a lot of respect. There's a pride that I wish, you know, would translate over to the career side. Not that on a career job there isn't a sense of pride. There is. But sometimes you see firefighters that are they're there for a paycheck,
Yeah,
where I wish I
I
could
get it.
take some of the career guys, some of the volunteer guys and bring them over to the career side with me because they'd be more professional than some of our paid, firefighters. And I'm not talking about my job, my department. This is
No,
across the board on the career side.
we all got them. We all got them. Volunteer career, you can't, the love for the job is the love for the job. And, you either have it or you don't. And if you don't, I hope you can find it. And if you can't find it, at least don't get in our way.
Right.
That's all.
You're in the wrong place. Absolutely.
That's right. Chief Al Pratts, thank you, Deputy Chief. I appreciate you for joining me today. What a great conversation, man. It was really great getting to know you. Looking
Likewise.
forward to future dealings, and tell Chief Turpak and so on that I said hello. But this was a lot of fun. So where can people find you, Chief, if they want to reach out, an email or website, whatever? Just plug yourself, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, they could reach out on Instagram at Promotional Prep. If they reach out on Instagram, they'll get me directly. They can go on to promotionalprep.com's website. There's a link there where you can register for emails, updates, and all that kind of thing, and send us any questions that you have. And that would be probably the best way to reach out to me. If anyone's ever in the North
Cool.
Hudson area, and it happens to be a third division day, you can find me, 29th Street.
Come on down. I'll treat you to some Peruvian chicken.
Yeah, Peruvian, Cuban, a little bit of everything.
That's right. Chief, thanks again. I appreciate
All
your
right,
time.
brother.
Stay right here.
Okay.
I'm just going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, okay?
No, it's good.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. I'm the luckiest guy in the American Fire Service. I get to talk to rock stars all the time. Deputy Chief Al Pratts out of the North Hudson Regional Fire and Rescue Department in New Jersey was no exception. This guy crushed it today. So thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening to the podcast. And do me a favor, like I finish every podcast, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, because when we talk about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.